Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. It is, what is it today? Is it the 30th of April? I have no idea what it is. Anyway, whatever the date is today, good morning, good morning. I have to tell you that we're very fortunate to be on live because my internet was all over the place and it still looks as if it's a bit all over the place. So if I lose you later on, I have no control. I know everybody thinks I've got control of the airwaves, but I've no control over this. So it is story time. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And first, before we begin, I'd like to say good morning to Grey Eagle, who is standing to my right side here, and I'd like to say good morning to Chris. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Chris. I was going to say good morning, Chris. Good morning, Rosemary. Yeah.
So, Chris, how is everything looking? Have I still got 4 bars or whatever it is?
You do have 4 bars. You just had to put yourself through the little ringer over the last 20 minutes trying to get on live for
I'm
everybody.
telling you that my back is screaming at me right now, but hey, I'm used to that. Uh, so what date is it today, Chris? I'm all of
You were right. April 30th. Yes,
it
we're
is.
almost into May.
Okay, 30 days have September, April, June, and November. Anyway, so oh my golly, is tomorrow the 1st of May? Is it May Day tomorrow, Chris?
Is that what you call it for the 1st of
Yeah,
May?
May Day. It's May Day, where we do probably in England, they probably have, and many other countries in the world actually, they have the maypole for dancing, which is very traditional. They have the May Queen already chosen. They have the floats going out. I don't know if they're going to be doing it today or tomorrow because officially May Day is tomorrow. Or maybe they'll just say, let's do it next weekend when we're well and truly into May. But anyway, we do have May celebrations. They used to do it in the jousting times, in the times of King Richard the something, the Lionheart he was. Anyway, I can't remember which Richard he was. I think he might have been the third. But please, if you're listening and you know better than I do, I will bow to your expertise. You can tell me which Richard it was, and they were the days of Robin Hood, Chris. If you're not certain where I'm going with this, they were the days of Robin Hood and Nottingham Forest. And I was born in the city of Leicester, which is just like almost just a bit more than a spit away from Nottingham. And Nottingham Forest is beautiful. I remember once going to Nottingham Forest years ago. I was only a kid, well, teenager really, and the bluebells at this time of the year, maybe a little bit earlier, were carpeting the entire floor of the part of the forest that I was in. I've never seen such a stunning display, sort of like a violet blue almost. It was really, really stunning. Nottingham Forest is brilliant. Now they have turned Nottingham Forest into a playground. They have camping, and they have I don't know, they have a lodge in Nottingham Forest. They have all sorts of things going on. People go there for weekends, they go there for long weekends. You can go there for a week or two if you want to do. People vacation nowadays in Nottingham Forest, but gone are the days where a traveller would be walking or riding through Nottingham Forest and set upon by thieves and vagabonds, namely, who was it? Robin Hood and his merry, what were they called? And their merry gang of thieves. So, well, I don't know where we're going with this, but anyway, it is May, everybody. We all know tomorrow is May, and May is a very special month for me. We come to the end, I suppose we come to the end officially of our year of celebrating the 25th year of the Eagle and the Rose is officially today but we're not going to take any notice of that. We're still going to be celebrating through the month of May. We've got a few things planned for you. I'm going to be cooking. I'm going to be doing exactly what I did last year by showing you what I'm going to have for my birthday dinner. I'm going to have my friend Karen here from Canada. So she's going to share in my birthday dinner, and hopefully a couple of other people will be sharing my birthday dinner with me. What shall we have for my birthday dinner. Oh golly, well I love fish, you see, but I did fish last year for you, so I have to think of something else. Chris, you got any ideas?
Well, I know you also love your roast duck,
Yes, well
lobster.
had, had Karen. I'm not sure that Karen's so keen on lobster. I love lobster, but I did a roast duck last week. Oh golly, it was so delicious. Last Saturday actually was my last night with my darling boy and my darling girl, and I made a lovely roast duck with orange sauce and if you're really interested, I'll give you the recipe. It's honestly easy to make. People think that duck à l'orange is because it sounds so good, so fancy, but they think it's difficult. And it is the easiest thing. I swear to you, it is the easiest thing in the world to make, as long as you've got the right size duck. Anyway, all right. Sorry about that. I couldn't help that. Do we have anybody there? Is there anybody there, Chris?
Well, Gary's asking you, why aren't you making moussaka for your birthday?
Oh, Osaka. Oh, well, Gary, my friend Gary and I went on a trip to the Greek islands a few years ago. He carried my bags for me. That was basically it. When I was doing a little event on the beautiful, which island was it, Gary? Was it Crete? I can't remember. Oh my gosh, can't remember. Anyway, we did a fabulous trip, and we were there for a couple of weeks. And Gary, I'm not sure he had moussaka before. If you don't know what moussaka is, look it up. It's too complicated for me to tell you. Eggplant and ground, I think it's supposed to be made with ground lamb, actually, traditionally. But you can use ground beef and all sorts of goodies in there as well. And he loved it so much that he had it every single day. Either had it for lunch or he had it for dinner. And sometimes he'd have it for lunch and dinner. And on our very last day, do you remember, Gary? It is story time after all. I think I should tell this story. On our very last day, we're sitting at a little table. We're having lunch before we go shopping. There's a nice little sort of market out in the town square there. And so we're relaxing. We've no more work to do. We're thoroughly enjoying ourselves. And we're sitting in this small, tiny restaurant, heavy wooden tables. And all of a sudden, we hear a loud sort of clang sound. And Gary looks down and his belt has broken. He's eaten so much moussaka that his belt has literally snapped. The buckle has hit the table and he looks down. We both start laughing. He said, I think the first thing I need to get when we go shopping is a new belt. So he got a new belt. So he loves moussaka. I've made it for him a time or two. It's a surprise, but I could make that. But for my birthday, Gary, I would make that for your birthday, not for mine. Any other suggestions from anybody out there? Feel free. Feel free. Rack of lamb, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to figure out what Karen wants as well. I can't be selfish. But whatever it is that I'm making, I will show you. We will cook a little together. Maybe we'll make the appetizer and a dessert like we did last year. Instead of doing it each week, we might do it all in one go. We'll have to see how it goes. I've got to talk to Chris about it. But anyway, what do you think, Chris? A birthday dinner?
Well, I think that would make your day fun for you. So do whatever makes your day fun.
Okay. All right. So anyway, so where are we? So what are we? So what are we up to? Who's there, Chris? You told me. I've asked, is there anybody there? You said yes. Who is there?
Oh, we have a lot of your regulars. I've asked because the numbers that are showing are so much more than who's actually showing up in the chat room.
Yeah.
If we have any new people to let us know and like we'd like to welcome you. Dean is saying, hi all, it's rainy in Wisconsin today and very windy. Rosemary, just remember, my birthday is a week before yours. Haha. Friday, May 13th. 13th is one of my lucky numbers.
Well, Karen is actually arriving in Florida on the 13th, Dean. So What do you want for a birthday dinner, Dean? What would you like for me to make for your birthday dinner? No, I'm not promising anything. Just want to know. What would you like? Okay. Anybody else, Chris?
Karen's saying you can absolutely be selfish because she likes it all.
Yeah, she actually does. But which is your favorite, Karen? Let us know. We want to know what your favorite is. Not that I'm promising to make it for you, definitely not. And I will be selfish. It's my birthday after all. What dessert could I make? I'm thinking to myself. I actually made some small little baby meringues and filled them with delicious cream. And I took some over to my neighbour's house. I actually took these small meringues and I sandwiched them together with cream. And I took 5 of them over to my neighbours because there were 5 of them in the house at the time. And apparently, the mother of the family ate most of them herself. She admitted to me yesterday. Anyway, so yeah. So any requests out there? Anything that you think I might like to cook, or might know how to cook, or you might want to watch me cook, or if you've got one of my cookbooks, of course, take a look in there and see what there is. Short ribs, maybe. Oh, short ribs sounds really good, don't you think? I love short ribs. Anyway, we'll think about it. We'll keep going, and we need your help. Chris, any questions, any comments, anything going on there?
Oh, you've got a lot from your last little couple of minutes. So, Mary wanted to know, what is your favorite dish?
It's hard for me. I don't know. Fish, I think. I don't know.
A-
I
And
don't know.
then Maggie wants to know, do you do a Mediterranean pasta dish?
I do actually, but pasta is not my favorite food. I know. But if I'm making pasta, what I really love to make is pesto. And I love to put pesto in pasta. And I love to put pesto on fish. And I make my own pesto. We talked about this, I think, last year. I make my own pesto. And we had many comments from the Italians. So why don't I do this again? Pesto traditionally is made with pine nuts and lots of other good things. I prefer walnuts because they are a little sort of earthier, sort of have a tiny bit heavier flavor, and they are so delicious. And I'm a big walnut fan anyway. So yeah, so now we're going to get the comments from the Italians. Walnuts, you can't make pesto with walnuts. No way. We had lots of comments. I don't know if you remember, Grace. There were people who were mightily offended that I should use walnuts instead of pine nuts. But hey, I like them better. What can I say? Anything else, Chris?
Dean saying a birthday dinner for him. My mother would always make me a pork roast with applesauce on the side. And for dessert, never cake, always SCHAUM, sham, tort, covered
S
with strawberries and cream.
SCH.
AUM.
Never heard of it. I wonder what that is. Dean, come on, give us the recipe. I personally am not allowed to eat berries of any kind. I love them dearly, but I'm not allowed to eat berries because they're very bad for me, because they have oxalates in them. Don't you feel sad for me? Don't worry, I find lots of other food that I can eat that is equally as good. So, what else is going on, Chris?
Karen likes your bacon sandwich for her birthday. Um, Annika says meringues with cream sounds delicious because she has a sweet tooth. Maggie's all for the short ribs. Judith, because I'm assuming from your last show, she wants tripe.
Three.
And
Yeah,
and Rhonda says cake, any kind of cake. I love cake.
I really don't care for cake. I make cake for other people. I'm happy to make cake for other people. And I make really good cakes, really moist, delicious. I've worked really hard to perfect. What have I perfected? My chocolate mocha, which is like a chocolate cake, but with some coffee in it, a little bit of coffee in it. By the way, I make a fabulous lemon cake. Look at me blowing my own trumpet here. Well, it is nearly my birthday month, so I can do that. Coconut cake is one of my favorites, so I've perfected a coconut cake. And what other cake do I make? I think that's pretty much it. Of course, everybody in England knows how to make a Victoria sandwich, and then you sort of play with it and make it even more delicious than a regular plain old Victorian sandwich. But
You'll have to say what that is, Rosemary.
A Victoria sandwich is it's okay. It's 444 333 666. Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think I'm nuts? Okay, a Victoria sandwich. It was a cake that was created for Queen Victoria, hence the Victoria sandwich. It is so simple and so easy to make. 4 ounces of flour, 4 ounces of sugar, 4 ounces of butter, and I think you throw an egg in there as well. And it's nice and fluffy. You usually make it in 2 pans, and then you sandwich them together, and it's the sandwiching together that makes them, what are you going to put to sandwich them together? You can flavor them. I used to take a can of strawberries for Samantha's birthday when she was a little girl. It was her favorite thing because it ended up being pink cake. So I would make a Victoria sandwich. I'd make a big one. I'd make a double size one, and I'd take a can of strawberries. I'd pour out the juice. I'd chop up the strawberries. Use the juice instead of milk or whatever liquid you're going to put in your buttermilk or whatever you're going to put in your cake. And I'd use a little bit of strawberry juice from the can. Chop up the strawberries, throw them in at the end, bake it in the oven, and there we had a delicious strawberry a delicious strawberry cake, Victoria sandwich. And Samantha used to love it. It was her favorite thing to do, to eat, should I say. And also she used to help me make them. But I'm not a cake person. I'm a pastry person. Give me pastry any day of the week, savory or sweet. What else am I? I am. I like meringues. I like my trifle. I don't like trifles that have jelly in, or jello as Americans would call it. But the traditional trifle in England, often people put jelly in, and that's not for me. So I make my own special Victorian trifle, which I've adapted over the years with no jelly in it whatsoever. And I have people, when I go to my daughter's for Christmas, or even any time in the summer, and she has a party, she'll invite people. My mum's here and she's cooking, and people actually give requests. And one of the requests is she making that trifle? Oh, is she going to make that those delicious almond tartlets? Yes. So we get requests from people. I'll come if she makes the trifle, is one of the things that people say. I'll definitely come if she makes the trifle. So anyway, I thought, don't you think, Chris, don't you have favorite foods? What are your favorite foods?
Mine happen to be in the pasta family. I love my lasagnas, and a good Caesar salad and some nice fresh out of the oven, warm bread with butter. I like the comfort foods.
But that's also so fattening. You've got all that sugar, because pasta just turns to sugar in your mouth. I don't know if anybody, you must know that, right? It's a common.
Do you think when you ask a person what their favorite food is that they care about that? No.
Okay. But I can see that. But it's odd because although I don't mind eating pasta, and a nice fine angel hair or a linguine is, I can eat it sometimes. I can't eat a lot of it. I don't want to eat a lot of it. I like a white creamy sauce if I'm going to have pasta, preferable to a red sauce. Just me, just who I am. And that can make it really delicious. Anyway, moving away from food for a second, do we have any other questions or comments before I go into my story?
Well, if we can't talk about food, which is what you have been talking about, I'm going to have to scroll through all the food comments.
Oh, we want
Anybody reading the food comments is going to be starving by the time they leave here.
we shall read the food comments. But go ahead, yeah. What else have we got?
I don't have any comments other than food comments.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that
Well,
is
Dean,
so.
do you want to hear Dean's answer to your question
Yeah,
about
Sean
Sham
is how we
Tort?
say it? Yeah.
He says it's a very long whipped meringue. The recipe calls for beating the egg whites for 45 minutes. And they didn't have KitchenAid mixers when my grandmother made this.
If you were to beat egg whites for 45 minutes on an electric mixer, even if it's a little handheld, I can assure you that what you're going to get is, they revert back. They get really nice and thick and sort of nice and soft and almost spongy feeling to it. But then if you over whisk, which 45 minutes is an over whisk, they just turn back to liquid. So I'm a bit confused there, Dean. Maybe it was hand whisking for 45 minutes, which I can imagine that you might have to do. Aren't we lucky in our day and age that we've got all these amazing, fabulous gadgets that we can use now, where we don't have to beat ourselves up, beating up the eggs? Okay, all right. So it's a meringue. Okay, got it then. Sean, I got to look it up. All right. So, anything else, Chris? Before I'm going to
No,
dive my
I
story.
think you should feel free to go into your story time.
Okay. I'm conflicted with two stories because when I was talking to Greg this morning about which story we were going to tell, he talked to me about the little girl and the tiger. And if you've read The Eagle and the Rose, then you've read that story, and it's a wonderful story. So he was talking to me about that, and he was then talking to me about the other stories in that book. Now, I know that I've told, there are two stories. I'm sort of torn between which one I should tell you. I have a feeling I've told both of them, but apparently I need to tell this story from a different angle. So I'm going to have a go at this, and I don't really know what I'm doing, but Greg is laughing, got his hand on my shoulder, so I know I'm going to get some help with this. So, all right. So, thank you. So we're going to have that I needed that. I was torn between two. I didn't know quite where to go, but I'm going to now. I've had my instructions. I'm going to tell you the story of Dolly. Now, Dolly and her husband were very much working class people. They lived in a tiny, tiny, tiny sort of, I'm not even sure what you would call it. It was sort of like a block of tiny homes, single story homes. There were several of them in a row. And so she and her husband lived in one of these little tiny, I suppose you could call, let's call it a cottage. One bedroom, the living room and the kitchen and the dining room were all one longish room, not that long, again, very tiny. But where there might have been a sofa or a couple of armchairs, there was a bed where Dolly slept. And Dolly and her husband had been married for many years. She was diagnosed with cancer, and she was sick for quite a long time. And she lived in this tiny little place in this bed that was tucked up in the corner on the far back wall of this room. And there was no window. She couldn't see out of the window. She was too far back. But she could see if her husband was there, if he was in the dining room, or if he was in the kitchen. She could see what was going on there. And she, as time went on, she became weaker and weaker as the cancer ravaged through her body, which it did. She became weaker and weaker. One day, I received a phone call, and it was from a friend of the husband, and they said, "Could I possibly help? Could I go in and could I help?" I think that people were at a bit of a loss because this couple was a very private couple. They really didn't have too many friends. They really didn't share their woes and troubles with anyone. So for them to ask for help, I think, was a big thing. So I went along with my friend Kay, actually, who was with us last night on the Cracking Up show. Anyway, did I say once upon a time here, Chris? Because I can't remember.
No, and I didn't want to interrupt you.
You know, I've got to start. No, I won't start all over again, but it just occurs to me. Once upon a time, as all good stories must begin. Am I losing it? It's this internet thing that has
Yeah, it's
all
it's
over.
how your day started. Yeah.
So anyway, so once upon a time, and then we know part of the story. And my friend Kay came with me to see Dolly, and we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know them at all. They hadn't been to our healing centre, so it wasn't as if they were patients of ours already. But I was told that this lady was very, very sick and didn't have very long to go. And I was wondering why then, why wouldn't they have called me earlier? Why did they wait till the last minute to do something? And when I went into this house, this tiny little place, it I realized very quickly that um, there was no chance of Dolly surviving the cancer at all, because at this stage in her illness, I was told that she had, let's say, shrunken because the illness had literally ravaged her body. Um, I saw, first of all, her husband, who really didn't say anything to me except hello. Their friend was there to introduce me and to say to the husband, "This is Rosemary." I don't know if he wanted me there or if he didn't want me there. I think he was just at that moment in time just very confused about what was happening in his life and what was going on. And I learned very quickly that he was the kind of man who would rather bury his head in the sand than actually face what the reality of the situation, which of course we can all understand. As I approached the bed, I saw this sort of bundle, small bundle in the bed under the blankets, and it looked to me like there was a very small child in this bundle. Was so tiny, it looked like it was a very small child in there. So I approached the bed carefully, and her husband told me my wife's name is Dolly. So I was talking to Dolly, even though I couldn't at this point see her. I was talking to Dolly, and "Hello, Dolly, I'm Rosemary, and if you'd like me to, I've come to give you some healing." And this teeny tiny little head, almost skull like, and I mean skull like, came out from under the covers, and these big wide eyes in this shrunken face, which was so skeletal, looked out at me. And the eyes were the eyes of, I don't know if you've ever seen an animal caught in a trap, afraid, fearful, not knowing what was going on, and filled with pain. It was so startling. Even as I'm talking about it, I can picture this very clearly. I can picture how Dolly looked and how she looked the very first time I saw her. So I grabbed a small wooden chair that was by the kitchen table, and I went and sat down by Dolly's bed, and I started talking to her, and I said, I understand that you've been sick for a long time. All she did was look at me. No words, no speech, no hello, no nothing. Just this wild-eyed, fearful look. And that was how she was spending her days, curled up in bed. She and her husband, as I said, were very private people. I don't think they communicated too much with each other. I think it was just, you know, how some of those situations are. Uh, I think they had a good marriage, but there was not much in the way of communication. So, for the last several weeks, if not several months, as she was getting more and more sick, she was spending more and more time curled up under the blankets, not quite knowing what to do, not quite knowing how to express herself, um, not being able to ask her husband for help. And even if she had been able to ask her husband for help, what would she have said to him anyway? She didn't really know what kind of help she was in need of. So I talked to Dolly a little bit about healing, and I told her what I was going to do, and I asked her if it would be okay if I put my hands on her to give her healing. And one of the first words she said to me was, "My back, it's my back. It hurts so much," and tears began to fall down her face uh, silently. So I said, "Would it be okay, Dolly, if I sat on the bed with you?" And she nodded. So my friend Kay sat in the chair, and I sat on the bed. And as I sat on the bed, Dolly turned to me and laid her head on my chest. Again, silent tears. I think she was so grateful that someone was there, someone had come, someone with a soft voice, someone showing kindness, someone showing gentleness. So I started to gently rub Dolly's back and to give her healing. As I was doing this, I was looking down at her. I don't think in my life, other than a baby's head, I don't think I've ever seen a head so teeny tiny. There was no hair. She'd obviously had chemotherapy. She'd lost all of her hair. And it felt, her whole body felt skeletal. She'd lost so much weight. At some point, I climbed further into the bed. I'm known for that. I like to get into bed with people sometimes. I climbed further into the bed, and I gently lifted Dolly, and I lifted her into my lap. And we sat, I talking very softly to her, telling her what I was doing, explaining how, I'm going to use that gift that God has given to all of us uh, to give her some healing and some comfort. And as I talked to her and as I stroked her back, she fell asleep. And I sat there for a long time. And at some point, her husband, who'd been sitting in the armchair close to the kitchen, the furthest away from us, looked over at me, and he said, "This is the first time that she's really slept in a long time." And I said to him, "Is it all right if I stay for a while, even though she's asleep?" And he just nodded and got up and went out of the house. I suspect because he was in tears, because there was somebody there, perhaps willing to help, to do something. He didn't even know what. It turns out that this couple had been struggling with this by themselves for a long time. It's so sad that they had to do that. It's so sad that they didn't have the voice to ask, can somebody help? Can somebody come? Can somebody come and sit with Dolly? Can somebody sit with me? Can we have some company? It was so sad that this was the situation. 2 or 3 more times I went back to see Dolly. Each time when I walked in the door, she would lift her head up from the blankets and her eyes were wide and she would smile at me the best she could. She loved having healing. She loved having someone there. And she loved it when I got into bed with her and held her in my arms and stroked her back and gave her some relief and some healing. There are so many people like that in the world. There are so many people who are suffering on their own. There's so many people who are afraid to ask for help. They don't even know how to ask for help. And if they did want to ask for help, they don't know what they would want to ask for help for. There are lots of people in these situations, neighbours, friends, family, and they bring food and they bring, sort of something, maybe for the husband to do, a book, a magazine, a newspaper, whatever it is. There are so many very, very well-meaning and wonderfully kind people who help in circumstances like this. Neighbours you never thought didn't even know you, will turn up with a pie or a dessert or something. And that's good, but touching is important. Touching a patient, touching a person, touching a friend. Touching is very important. I knew from the way Dolly held on to me that she hadn't had much touching. Her husband didn't quite know what to do. He was afraid. He was losing his wife. She was changing before his very eyes, becoming this terribly skeletal, weak little thing. And he was afraid, quite rightly. Of course he was afraid. He'd never had to experience this before. The nurses, when they came in to deal with her, I'm sure they were kind and I'm sure that they touched her, but not in the same way. Not holding, not loving, not taking time, not being gentle, not being kind, not listening. Nurses can do the best, and we have some fantastic nurses around. And I'm sure Dolly's nurses did their best. I'm sure that Dolly's husband enjoyed all the food that was being brought to him. I mean, who wouldn't? But what of Dolly, who buried herself in her blankets, like a wounded animal, trying to deal with her pain, trying to deal with knowing that she was dying, trying to deal with the loneliness that comes when you're in this situation? What of Dolly, and what of the many Dollys that are out there? So for those of you who want to be healers, for those of you who talk about, I wish I could do something like that, if you remember that all you have to do when you go and visit someone who's sick is to reach out your hand and hold theirs. That's all you have to do. You don't even have to speak. Just holding someone's hand, touching someone with a loving, kind energy, holding someone with a loving, kind and gentle energy. That's all most of us need in this life, whether we're sick or whether we're not sick. That's all most of us need. And to this day, I remember Dolly. I remember that tiny skeletal head, and I remember those big, big, big brown eyes. I remember the feeling of holding her and her sighing into me, finding the warmth and the comfort and the love that she had needed so much. Dolly died very soon after I got to know her. As I said, I went 3 times, and at the end of the third time, I knew there wouldn't be a fourth. And Dolly knew that there wouldn't be a fourth. She never really said a lot to me. She wasn't chatty. She didn't have the energy. She didn't know what to say to me anyway, but her eyes said it all to me. And when I reached for her every time I went, the way that she sank into me, the way that she drew to me, the way that she just sank into the healing energy that was surrounding her, told me that this was what Dolly needed. You might have a neighbour, you might have a friend, you might have a family member. I get it if you're afraid, if you don't know what to say to someone who's sick. I get it. It's terrifying. You don't know what to say, you're afraid to say the wrong thing. And there are a lot of people who are afraid because when you see someone else's vulnerability, it reminds you of your own fragile humanness. There but for the grace of God lies me. There but for the grace of God goes someone close to me. I understand the fear, and I understand why we are afraid when we sort of come around sickness, and when we come around people who are dying. I understand why we're afraid, but I also understand those of us who are not afraid, but we're not quite sure what to do and how to do it. When I first opened my first healing centre, it was fantastic. We had, I think it was about 8 or 9 patients, the first week we were there. The second week we were there, we had the same amount of patients, but not the ones who had come the first time. I think we must have disappointed the ones who came the first time. I don't know what happened to them. And after a few weeks of working in the healing centre with my students and having shown them about healing and what have you, I was sitting there one day and I kept thinking to myself, something isn't quite right. What is it? Something isn't quite right. And then it hit me. And I gathered all of my students together one night before we went to the healing centre, and I said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to remember that when people come through our doors, you might be the first person to hold them, to put your arm around them. You might be the first person they've talked to about why they're here. These people are vulnerable. And what was missing, and it took me a few weeks to realize it, what was missing was my healers were being respectful. They would walk people into the healing room. They would sit them down. Only when giving them healing would they put their hands on the patient's shoulders. People who are sick, people who are suffering, people who are not necessarily physically sick, but emotionally traumatized or sick, they need a hand to hold. And I said to my students, I want you to be the hand. Even if you're not used to it, even if you're not a tactile person, even if you don't know how to touch people, you reach out your hand and you put your hand on someone's back, or you put your arm around them, you say, come with me, you touch them. Dolly is a perfect example of a patient who hadn't been touched in a loving, caring, gentle way. Not because her husband didn't love her, but because he was afraid, he didn't know what to do. And to be honest, she looked as if you touched her, she'd break. But she's a perfect example of how people need that comfort, they need that love, and they need to be touched. So all of you out there who are dealing with someone who's sick, or you're dealing with someone who's unhappy, or you just want to give comfort to someone, don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to hold someone's hand. Don't be afraid to reach forward to them, because when you touch someone else, they touch you too, and you receive as much healing as they do. Dolly passed in peace. She passed gently in her sleep. She passed quietly a few hours after my last visit. I like to think that she passed peacefully because we'd had that wonderful healing session that she'd gotten so much from. And I like to think, and I know Kay is the same, we like to think that we gave something to Dolly and to her husband that perhaps they hadn't been given before. Just friendship and love, even to a stranger. The end. Okay, Chris, did you like that story?
I always like that story, and most of the people in the chat room are saying similar things, but I think with the last comment that you ended with, Rosemary, because we do have new people on, could you explain what healing is in the sense of when we think of the word heal, we think physically it means to get better, but that's not how you're talking about healing.
No, when I give healing, as Gregel has taught me to, it, we don't. It's not about healing the body. It's about healing the soul. It's about giving life and love and clarity to that, to the soul, to the spirit. The spirit is the energy field that surrounds the soul. As the soul begins to heal, the light, the aura, the energy field, the spirit becomes brighter and clearer and starts to permeate throughout the body. Now, sometimes, if we're lucky, sometimes that wonderful light touches every part of us and heals us in a physical sense. It gives healing to a cancer. I've seen a tumor that has completely disappeared after one session of healing. I've seen a woman leave one of our healing centres, the one that I was actually just mentioning earlier. I've seen a woman come in with a completely paralysed hand, which has been paralysed for perhaps 20, 25 years, totally paralysed, unable to move even the slightest bit, her hand in a fist for all of those years. And I've seen her leave the healing centre, go home to her husband, who jokingly said to her, "So, yeah, what was it like then? Were they crazy, these people?" And she stood in front of her husband and she said, "I'll tell you what it was like. Look." And her hand was completely healed. So sometimes healing is physical, but first and foremost, as a healer, I give healing to the soul, to bring light, to bring joy, and to bring the light of God to the soul, to feed the soul. And sometimes we have physical healing, and sometimes that healing is that calmness and that acceptance and that gentle passing into the spirit world, because death is not a punishment. Death, we're all going to do it. We're all going to go through it sooner or later. So healing is first and foremost a healing of the soul. Okay, Chris.
Rhonda says during the time when COVID was at its worst, they discouraged hugging and touching. I simply could not comply with that. When
Not
an
me.
elderly patient came into the clinic crying because they had lost a spouse, I had to hold them, and I could feel in my spirit that is just what they needed.
Rhonda, I love you. Sorry, I'm stirring my juice with my finger. I'll get some stirrers one of these days. What a nasty bad habit that is. Sorry. Anyway, good for you, Rhonda. I love you.
Judith says, when I was a child, my mother's touch was healing.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know that how nice for you, Judith. I know that a mother's touch can be the most healing thing. I know that my touch with my daughter and also with my grandson. I'll tell you a little story. Most of you, or some of you, will know that this week my eye was not great. It was sort of like dark red, and I can't believe I actually sat in front of the camera with my eye in such a state. But anyway, I did. So there we are. So that night, when my eye was at its worst, I was talking to Reese, and he said, you know, let me look at your eye, Mosey. And I showed him my eye, and I said to him, would you send me some healing, please? And he said yes. And he went away from the camera for a minute, then he came back and his eyes were closed, and he said, how's it feeling?
Aw.
And he was sending me healing in that moment. And what could I say? It's so much better. And it did feel so much better. You know, the love of our children is healing, and the love of a mother and a father, the love of parents to their kids, to their grandkids, is very, very, it's a very healing energy.
Lorraine says, gentle kindness in all situations. Another amazing story, and it puts everything into perspective.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you liked it. And doesn't it put things into perspective? Yes. Those of you who are moaning and complaining, oh gosh, it's raining again. Uh, you know, yeah, it does put things into perspective. Those of us who are saying, oh, I know it's warm and it's sunny, but it's a bit cloudy. The sky's a bit cloudy today. We do moan and complain, don't we, all of us, about the little things, and we know we shouldn't, but we do because we're human. But yes, stories like that do put things into perspective.
Annika says, what a moving story. My work is touching people. Like you, I know the importance of touch and giving comfort.
Well, good. I'm glad that you all love the story and you were all inspired by it. Anything else going on there, Chris?
Mark says, I have always believed that if we reach out to touch the hand of God, God will reach the rest of the way and already knows our lives, our joys, sorrows, and suffering. Does Gray Eagle agree?
Let me see, 1,000%, I would say. 1,000%. You know, as I was telling that story, I told this story a few months ago. It happened last year, which is only just a few months ago, isn't it? I went to the bank for something or another. I parked the car in front of the bank, and when I came out, there was a car parked right next to mine, and the windows were down, and there was a lady in the car, and she was very upset. She was weeping and wailing, and her head was in her hands, and then she would lift her head up, and she had a friend or someone in the car with her who oops, sorry about that. So, Chris, did I lose my
No,
spot?
you're still here.
There, sorry. Anyway, she was weeping and wailing, and she was always in a terrible state. And so I was just I just felt the need to, and here I am, I'm a stranger, just come out of the bank. I don't know them, they don't know me. And there was a woman sitting in the driver's seat of the car, and she was trying to calm her down and talk to her. And they were right next to my car, and the lady was in the passenger seat. So I just reached in, and they must have thought I was a crazy person, wouldn't you think? Who's this person interfering? How dare she interfere? Whatever. But it's about reaching out, I think. And so I reached into the car and I took this lady's hands, and very gently, very, very softly, I said to her, please, please don't cry. How can I help you? And she looked up and she looked into my eyes, and the tears stopped, and she just started to tell me how, devastated she was and how heartbroken she was. And then I listened for a while, and I looked to the woman passenger in the driver's seat, and I said, are you okay? Is there any way that I can help you? And she said, well, who are you? And I said, oh, I'm nobody. just I had to just reach in and see if I could help in any way. And I'm a healer. And they both gasped, and they told me that they've been trying to find a healer for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I said, well, here I am then. and I gave them healing. I held this lady's hand, the one who was distressed, and I gave her a healing, and they felt much better. By the time I walked away, they were smiling. It only took 10 or 15 minutes. What is it to me? It's not, you know, isn't that what giving is about? Sometimes you just got to bite the bullet. If somebody says, go away, mind your own business, so be it. So you go away and you mind your own business. Although I would still, had they said that to me, I would have still have sent them healing. But, what have you got to lose? Just don't go into any old stranger's car. Just don't think you can. Just be careful. We have to be so careful these days, don't we? But in those circumstances, when you know that someone is in deep distress, reaching out and saying, "Just let me hold your hand," it's healing all by itself. That's how it is. All right, Chris. I know that we don't have too much time, but keep going, shall we? A little bit.
Okay. I was trying to scroll back past all of the food comments.
We'll have one or two of those as well if you like. I don't mind the food comments.
Maggie was asking, was Dolly the caregiver of the relationship and the husband used to this was at a loss for what to do
uh,
in her pain?
yeah, I think so. I think so. I didn't know a lot about them. So, they were strangers to me when I walked in, and I only had 3 visits, and then that was that. And, but yes, probably I think the husband was completely at a loss as to what to do with what was going on with him. Yeah.
Mark says, ironically, your story was about back healing, dear friend, and here you are having back issues this morning.
Only because I had to bend down and unplug and plug in, and I had to go into the garage and I had to unplug and plug in, and it was exhausting this morning. But it's fine. I've got a cushion on my back, so I'm good. I'm not sure how I'll be when I get up, but I'm sure I'll be fine the rest of the day. I can lay on the sofa. I don't have anything to do today. Isn't that amazing? I have a lot to do. I have a ton of stuff to do, but I don't have to do any of it today. So if I want to just snuggle down, watch a movie, read a book, something like that, reading sounds good to me. Anyway, I can do that too. See how lucky I am? Chris.
Well, he had continued saying, tears welled in my eyes too as I was listening to your story. I only hope that, as you have said, I have great abilities to heal either with my voice of consolation or touch if my hands are used. I pray I am able to do more of this work when I retire in 2023. I love you and your
Woohoo!
stories.
Only another year to go. Woohoo!
Rhonda says, my eyes. Oh, I gotta go back up just slightly. I remember this story. It brought tears to my eyes and made me feel so fortunate that my siblings and I were able to be by my dad's side for weeks as he slipped away.
Right. I do. I mean, excuse me. I know that I've told that story before. I can't remember when, a while ago. But I think sometimes, hearing stories again is a good reminder of, and of course, there are always new people coming to the show who never heard the story before. So, but I don't mind. I always like listening to a good story, even if I've heard it 10 times over. If it's a funny story or inspirational story, I'll listen as avidly the first time as I will the 10th time.
Well, and for anyone who doesn't know, you have a healing page on Facebook. And
Do.
so all they have to do is every time somebody sends a healing request to the office, the name appears and people should be looking at that page every day if they want to participate in this, right?
Yes, and if you look at the names on our healing page and you are inclined to send healing to those people, we would love it if you join us in sending healing. Yes.
So I think we're right at time, Rosemary.
Oh gosh, it went so fast. Did we start late or something? I
We're
don't
a
think.
few minutes late, but we've gone over, so we're
Oh,
okay.
okay. Well, just to mention, that last night, for those of you who missed Cracking Up, we did have a really good cracking show, didn't we, Chris?
We did. We've had many comments in today's
Oh, you
chat
have?
that they loved it.
Oh, right. And we actually, after the show ended, the four of us, Chris and my two friends Kay and Kay and myself, I think we were chatting for another hour, weren't we, Chris?
Definitely. Mary Lou came over too.
That's right. So we were, yeah, she came to pick me up for dinner, and she got in on the conversation, and yeah, so and then she and I went out to dinner. That's so true. And then I went to the neighbours, and Mary Lou actually came with me. We went to the neighbours and had a drink with the neighbours, and we had a really nice time. Anyway, but Cracking Up was good. We will be back with Cracking Up. Keep watching. We're trying to do it once a month or once every 6 weeks or something like that. We should be definitely doing it in May because it's my birthday. So we'll definitely be having a Cracking Up session for May. And for those of you who don't know what we're up to, please go to my website, rosemaryaltea.com, and you'll find all sorts of bits of information. If you would like to subscribe, when you go to the web page and you subscribe, or if you go into YouTube and you subscribe to my channel, all that happens with subscribing is you will be entitled to a newsletter once a month. Chris does most of the work for the newsletter, but I put in my little bit as well, and I often will tell a story, or I will talk about certain different things that I've encountered through the month. So it's worth getting the newsletter. We try not to make it too long, but it's an interesting newsletter, and it keeps you up to date with what it is that we're planning for the next month or so. Anyway, so if you would like to receive a newsletter, subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything at all. You can go on the website and subscribe. You can go to YouTube and subscribe. You know, I promise you, it's worth it. All right. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. I'd like to say a special thank you to Chris, because you do such a great job. And of course, last but by no means least, we'd like to thank Grey Eagle, who has had a fun morning this morning with us. Until I see you all again, we'll be back on Thursday morning as usual with our whatever it is, with our The Spirit World Sees All. Keep watching, because we're going to be doing an off the cuff. We may even be doing a couple of off the cuffs, but remember, May is going to be busy. We're going to be doing a lot more. So stay posted, stay connected, see what we're up to. Thank you again, once again, all of you, for joining us. Until I see you all again, please have a very blessed rest of the day. Have a very blessed weekend, everybody. And hopefully I shall see you soon. Bye-bye.